Hello.
Hello.
So, what are we talking about?
Okay, what are we talking about? Welcome to the question of the week. This week we thought it would be interesting to do perhaps a little mini series. So this will go on for a few weeks. Because the DVSA have produced the top 10 reasons why people are failing their driving tests, which I have to say is pretty much no different to what it's always been.
Yeah, it's always been the same.
Absolutely.
List, yeah.
But we thought that once a week we will take one of the points and we will talk about it in terms of what we understand that to mean. I'm also very fortunate to have some colleagues who are driving examiners who are also giving me their take on it as well. So hopefully that will be interesting.
Yeah.
So just to let you all know that the top 10 reasons for failing a driving test are, and in this order: 1. Junctions observations. 2. Mirrors change direction. 3. Control steering. 4. Junctions turning right. 5. Moving off safely. 6. Response to signs, traffic lights. 7. Move off control. 8. Positioning, normal driving. 9. Response to signs, road markings. And 10. Reverse park control. So those are the ones that we will go through.
So before we go on to the first one, what doesn't surprise me is that the first manoeuvre one is right down the bottom. A lot of people spend a lot of time doing manoeuvres and put a lot of weight on it. The pupils worry about them a lot, but actually then, in fact, they're not a failure issue. And I saw when this came out during the week, there was I think it was the Independent big headline saying people failing because of the new test manoeuvre. Well, it's not on the list, so I'm not sure how they work that one out. Because to pull up on the right and reverse it isn't there, so that's not causing a problem, is it? I'll start putting my 2-word pinnacle.
So shall we talk about junctions observations and our understanding of that and an examiner's point of view of that?
Yeah.
So junctions observations, I don't think is particularly surprising that it has come up as the number one reason that people fail, because as you'll hear over the next few minutes is that actually lots of things are incorporated into what we are meaning by that, and certainly what the examiners interpret as that. Secondly, it is the biggest factor involved. I think something like 37% of crashes that happen have in their top reason failure to observe as their top reason for crashing.
So not giving way to give way and not giving priority on a roundabout, or those types of things, isn't it?
So I asked my little group of friendly driving examiners to tell me what they were seeing on the shop floor, if you like. And I asked whether junctions observations, what exactly it meant. So I asked whether, does it mean not looking at all? So in other words, a junction, classic one is the mini roundabouts, isn't it? Invisible roundabouts, my son calls them. So junctions that you just don't see, so you just kind of fly out or over. So does it include not looking at all? Does it include looking but not seeing? And I know that you'll know what I mean by that in terms of just doing your routine observations but not truly seeing anything, or failing to see something that was there. Looking in the wrong place, looking at the wrong time, seeing but making an incorrect judgment. So looking, seeing the car, for example, but still going, making
thought I had
an
enough
incorrect
time,
judgment.
thought it was going slow, I thought he was turning off, whatever it must be.
And the reply back from the examiners was all of the above, which doesn't surprise you. But then I had an interesting conversation with them in terms of what they think is the most common things that are happening, and certainly how they would then mark that and interpret that. So the feedback was that it tended to be often related to observations that were happening too late. So in other words, the observation might happen, but not necessarily on approach to the thing that is stopping you. So for example, the junction or the roundabout.
So coming up, stopping, then looking, rather than looking, and as it opens you can do those final checks, you can carry on. So prepared to stop, ready to go, but they're just prepared to stop.
I think so. And I think that what happens then, of course, is that if the brain hasn't got time to register what's going on, the car and the brain doesn't do what it needs to do. So the ability to give yourself a time to be able to look what's going on. That relates directly into the next comment that they said, which was that quite often the observation fault will happen because of something that's happened before, when there's an awful lot of stuff going on, and the multitasking type of thing that they have to do falls, the observations fall off the bottom of that priority list. So for example, if they've not seen the junction, they see a junction too late, or their speed is inappropriate for a junction, that the chaos that is caused in having to do the physical stuff to get round the junction means that the observations that happen should happen that don't happen.
That's why I think it's one of the reasons at the top, because there's lots of factors will go in that box. Rather, you would think that would be speed and approach, for example, but it's not, because the outcome is that they couldn't look properly. Therefore, it's not 100% the case, but the outcome tends to be what gets put down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So the outcome being, so they could be coasting up, for example, and not covering that with a brake. The fault is the coasting, but actually the fault is then making them not look properly and pulling out, or not controlling it while they're going out.
Which links into the next thing that was given to me, and that is that quite often, particularly at roundabouts we're talking, pupils will be looking to the right and not looking for blockers. So their observations are incorrect there because they're missing the things that are going to allow them to go. My question back to them
judgment,
was,
isn't it, really?
Well, my question to them was whether this came down to hesitation then. So if you're not looking where you should be looking and you're not making the most of an opportunity to go, why is that not hesitation? And actually the answer was that what tends to happen is that they look not necessarily in the right place, they make an incorrect judgment because they then wait for a gap to arise. They then take quite a long time to get going, so the gap that was there is no longer there, and they cause somebody else to have a problem. So now I also thought that this would possibly be other things that it would be marked under, but the answer from these lovely examiners was that an examiner has to mark down what they can be 100% sure about. And it could be numerous reasons why a pupil didn't go or was slow to get off the mark. But without actually asking the pupil all of those things and trying to work it out, you can't be 100% sure what it is that caused them to do it.
Wrong gear, could be not being prepared, couldn't it? Not being ready to go because they're balancing the clutch against the brake and their foot's not on the gas, so they can't pull away quick enough, all those types of things.
But the only thing they can be 100% sure about
is
that they didn't go, and so the observations, be it for looking and judging incorrectly and all that other stuff that I went through, then manifests itself. That was a good point that they made, that they said very often pupils will be waiting with clutch against brake, and so the car is initially controlled, but the foot then isn't on the gas to get themselves going, so the gap that was there is no longer there at the point where they puttle off at their junctions, and that goes down as an observation fault.
Yeah, and certainly roundabouts, we've done videos on that before, so I won't go into that too much, but if you're not preparing, you're not ready, and you don't go at the right time, you've got that little window. It's probably only 1 or 2 seconds, and if you miss that window, then either you're going to pull out and cause an issue, or you're not going to pull out, and you could have done if you were just ready that extra second early, or just sitting back and creeping up, or whatever it happens to be, but that's a different video, isn't it?
I think for me, when it comes to observations at junctions, it's one of those things that knowing it's so crucial, it's so safety critical, isn't it, that particularly when it comes to mock tests and things like that, I never put a minor down for it on a mock test. It will always be, if I have the slightest inkling that a pupil has an issue with it, I will make a point of it, because it is so serious.
Well, that's one of the points of mock tests, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we come on to things like they could be using, like we spoke about recently, walk across, drive across rules and things like that may not work, and that would go down as the observation. But actually, it's not the observation the problem; it's the rule they're trying to implement. That's not working.
The judgment issue.
Yeah, the judgment isn't working for them.
Hesitation. Yeah. And I think that's possibly what I've learned a little bit from this, is that it's not necessarily a hesitation issue. No. It is an observation issue.
Yeah.
So
I think we can safely say if they don't go out when they should, or they go out when they shouldn't, in most circumstances it's going to go down as an observation, even if it's the wrong gear or something like that, because it's just because that's they know that that's definitely, it's definitely okay to put that down. It can't be argued and so on. Yeah, and just I think one of the reasons it's the top, not because it happens more than anything else. It's just there's more factors can go into that box.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So
if you're not sure, if as an examiner, stick it down there because you're safe then, as it were.
I also think that in terms of the majority of other faults that happen, there's a certain element of being able to rescue oneself. But with an observation fault, once it's happened, you can't rescue that. You can't rescue having got it wrong. So it's more likely to be a serious issue.
Yeah, like I certainly say on manoeuvres, is you can't redo the observation.
No.
Once you haven't seen the kid on the bike, you haven't seen the kid on the bike.
Yeah.
But you can redo, if you didn't take the turns off or you turned at the wrong time or whatever it happens to be, you can redo any of that stuff. You can never redo observations. Once they've gone or not happened, they've not happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think from my point of view with my pupils, the emphasis is if it's going to be on anything, it will be more to understand the fact that not going when you could have done is less of an issue than going when you shouldn't.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line.
Still marked down, but you're not going to kill anyone.
Yeah. You're going to get away with a certain amount of I guess hesitation, a little bit of novice driver kind of judgment going on there. An examiner is more likely to take an overview of what happens over a 40-minute period or something like that.
If it's constant,
absolutely,
then that's showing an underlying issue with whatever that may be, preparation or...
Absolutely. But you could have done the most beautiful observations, perfect judgment, absolute correct decision making, and on one junction,
you don't see that motorbike come around the roundabout. That's it.
It's going to be a serious.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's, as you say, it's the most common reason there's accidents, isn't it?
So that is number one on the top 10 lists of why people fail. So junctions, observations. So have a think about how you're bringing that into your lessons. We're not necessarily here to come up with any solutions to that. Given you a couple of things that we kind of talk about perhaps, but maybe think about it in terms of tests that you have got coming up or tests that you've had recently where perhaps that has been a fault that has been marked, and see whether you can work out whether it is a not looking at all, looking and not seeing, looking at the wrong time, looking at the wrong place, looking but not making the correct decision based on what you see.
I think that comes back to it's pretty important to know what your pupils are failing on or getting marked on, so keeping some sort of record. You can get a sheet that you can just put the date and put them on. You can glance at it in one go and see 3 out of 4 are failing for hesitation or observation, on this case, or mirrors or whatever it happens to be, and then you can just take note of that and see what's happening in your instructions to try and improve that. See patterns, because if you can see patterns then you can do something about them potentially.
It's also quite useful from sitting in on the back point of view, because as we've just said, there's so many other stuff going on in terms of what it could come down to, that just when you see a fault in junctions, observations, we don't necessarily know exactly what's gone on.
No, absolutely. I think particularly for PDIs and things, to know what's marked for what, sitting in the back is the only way to find out, and you learn your trade, don't you? That we sit in the back of all part 2s and 3s, standard checks when we can, and that's one of the reasons we know what we know, because we nick it off the DBSA, don't we?
We do. Anyway, there we
go.
go.
Next, the battery's run out.
Thank you very much.
Bye.